Okay, there was one more. There were several speakers who said continuous spinal was a technique which could be used for most of the diseases, congenital cardiomyopathy as well as stenotic valvular. Now, world over, in fact, more so in India, we do not have those microcatheters. Why don't you consider using an epidural catheter placed intrathecally and use it as a continuous spinal for...
No, Subra.
What are the pros and cons? That's why I want...
They are available. Micro catheter is not available. Macro catheter is available. Yes. It costs you 7,500 rupees. Vicon has marketed it. They marketed it about 10 years ago. It's not difficult to get it. Once you agree to use them, they are 26 gauge catheter over the needle, not catheter through the needle.
Right.
And it is slightly tough to use because you have to get the hang of using it. But you could really use them.
No, since we're talking of a life-saving situation here, what is the real contraindication of putting an epidural needle intrathecally, putting the epidural catheter intrathecally, and using it as a continuous spinal for the procedure you want, which is a cesarean section? Okay, so what if the patient has a headache later?
Yeah, the only problem with using an epidural catheter is going to be post-dural puncture headache, as you say. Otherwise, there should be no contraindication, because there are some reports earlier, before the microcatheters were available, where they had used 16 gauge epidurals for continuous spinal. I mean, there have been cases of cardiomyopathy managed with continuous spinal with a 16 gauge catheter. So I don't think there is contraindication, but then you do have the risk of a post-dural puncture headache.
No, I understand. Now, what I'm asking the three speakers is that a higher risk than the benefit the continuous spinal offers?
You could probably why not just an epidural if you have the time? You will be avoiding the problem of a post-dural puncture headache as well.
I mean, everybody,
right.
Please, all the speakers.
See, I personally think your option is perfectly fine. One of the ways you treat dural puncture headache, if I puncture the dura while giving anything, I'll put in a catheter, wait for 24 hours and take it out after that. This is an accepted technique to treat dural puncture which you not really planned, and you plan to give an epidural, you puncture the dura. One of the ways you could do it, you could take out the needle, go up, but I would prefer to put an epidural catheter. The only issue is that you shouldn't be shearing the epidural catheter, so you have to be soft. And we have seen it, we were all together, and we've even seen it works very well in labor also, where the incidence of PDPH is probably the highest. You have a perfectly legal technique.
Dr. Chan, you want to comment on that?
Actually, I mean, it's perfectly all right. I totally agree with Dr. Aruna that you can actually use it, but do be very careful, especially if you put the epidural catheter into the intrathecal space. Because if you don't flag it as an intrathecal catheter and somebody actually puts in a dose that's meant for an epidural, you're going to get a disaster in your hand, and it's going to become a total spinal. And if you've got a patient with a cardiac lesion, the patient would not be able to cope.
Become a norm. The point is well taken, but whenever you do this, there are two things which are very important. One is that you label at all possible places.
Obviously.
Well, I can't put a label on the patient's forehead, but something like that you've got to do it.
Yeah.
And the second thing is no top-ups to be given by any nurses. Somebody who's done it, either he does it himself or he gets somebody to do it, but not by nurses, or if you have midwives, not by midwives. That's the protocol. The top-ups to be given by a person who's done it. Fine, he's decided to go slightly sideways, so he gives the top-ups.
Yeah, but you can have doctors who are suffering fatigue and everything. You put instructions all over, highlighted, flag and everything. People still make mistakes. So I'm just highlighting it as a point. Yeah.
Anything you want to say?
This top-up is usually, we are practicing it, giving by only anesthesiologists. I mean, we're not giving the opportunity for nurses and they have to touch even this.
Okay. No, and I just want to point out one thing, Dr. Yunus. You continuously mentioned that antibiotic prophylaxis for infective endocarditis should be taken for non-valvular diseases. I think if you see the current cardiology guidelines,
it's controversial.
It is clearly mentioned that only for prosthetic heart valves should you give prophylaxis.
It's a recent publication. It seems to be controversial, but it's with our country, like so developing country, we cannot, spare, and we cannot think of this one. We're not giving this prophylactic.
Okay.
And especially with the congenital heart disease, it's better if there is no patient getting, and there's a ratio, it's a benefit and ratio, and that's we can
Okay, there seem to be no more questions.
Can I ask Dr. Anjan a question? Or rather kind of make a comment on that. I know that a lot of us actually want to monitor cardiac output, want to monitor flow from the heart. But, there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes between the cardiac output and what exactly happens at the tissue level in terms of perfusion. Because you can see this quite clearly sometimes in sepsis in the sense that you may have a normal cardiac output. All the parameters may actually be quite normal. But a lot of damages that may actually be already occurring at the tissue level in sepsis, for example, when the thrombosis are already occurring. So all your tissue monitor in terms of lactate, in terms of, base excess, would actually provide a better monitor in terms of the output. And I think one should actually be quite cognizant of this particular disconnect between cardiac output and what is happening at tissue level.
That's perfectly taken. It is normally the thumb rule. You don't treat the patient, don't treat the numbers. Any number of a cardiac output doesn't really matter. The monitor shows me 24. It doesn't really matter if the patient clinically doesn't look to be good. So you're perfectly right. You've got to go for the labs, and after all, you could have the labs reports with you and you have a monitor, so you have to check both of them. It's something like you take an ABG report and the ABG shows you that the patient needs to be tubed, but the patient is sitting up, you don't tube a patient. So you have to take care of your clinical skills, lactate levels, which are easier to get. An ABG and a lactate would be available everywhere. Maybe a cardiac output is not available everywhere. But that is the next stage. But again, you compare both the numbers and then treat the patient.
Yeah, because recurringly in most maternal mortality reports from the UK, they say that if you have a sick patient, if you're down to one investigation, the blood gas remains one of the most important parameter you should look out for, because it will tell you what exactly is happening to the tissue level and what you should be managing in terms of getting the oxygenation to the tissues improved.
Right, that's perfectly taken. It's just that these reports regarding LITCO has started coming from UK itself, and Philips UK manufactures LITCO. So a lot of reports come from your Philips UK LITCO.
And I just want, for the audience benefit, he didn't elaborate it in the talk. The difference between FlowTrack and LITCO is that LITCO needs a CVP catheter and a femoral artery catheter. That's the way LITCO functions. It's a transthoracic cardiac output method. Whereas for a FlowTrack, you only need a radial artery catheter. So it's the least invasive of the cardiac output monitoring. That's why they have 10 monitors in their hospital. We have in Global as well. NIMS has it. Now there's many centers having it. And we found a very good correlation, especially in transplants. Liver transplants, now it's correlating very well with the PA catheter. And for the fluid shifts, it's fantastic, because it shows stroke volume variation, the FlowTrack. And you can titrate the fluid shifts based on the stroke volume variation.
That's maybe 50, 60 transplants down the line, you will stop your PACs and shift over to FlowTracks only.
We have already.
You would put in the sheath, but not put in the...
Okay, we come to the end of this session. Thank you very much for participating. Thank all the speakers for excellent presentations. Thank you very much.